I am going to kick us off now. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our Solution Series webinar. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the Solution Series is a monthly conversation designed to help manufacturing leaders tackle some of the workforce challenges facing our industry today. Every month, we cover a different topic and share real world strategies and actionable ideas that organizations can take back and apply within their own workplaces. Today's discussion focuses on employee recognition and how companies can utilize the Manufacturing Institute's Step Ahead Awards to celebrate their employees. So, for anyone who's not familiar with the Step Ahead Awards, they are the Manufacturing Institute's program to honor manufacturing leaders driving the industry forward. Every year, companies across the country nominate individuals whose leadership, innovation, mentorship, and impact are helping strengthen the organization and communities. Awardees are celebrated at the Step Ahead Awards Gala, and their stories become powerful examples of what a career in manufacturing can look like. And it inspires the next generation to pursue careers in this industry. But Step Ahead is about more than one night and one award. At its core, it's about recognizing people. In an industry where skilled talent is increasingly difficult to attract and retain, recognition is one of the most powerful tools organizations have to strengthen engagement, build culture, and demonstrate employees that their contributions matter. And the data supports that. Gallup found that employees who receive meaningful recognitions are significantly more likely to stay within their organizations. Yet, only about 1 in 5 employees report receiving recognition at a level that they believe is appropriate for the work that they do. The challenge isn't finding deserving people. Every manufacturing company has individuals making extraordinary contributions every day. The challenge is making sure those contributions are seen, celebrated, and shared. That's why today's conversation matters, because a great employee doesn't automatically translate into a great nomination. Someone has to tell the story, someone has to connect the achievements, the impact, and the leadership in a way that brings it to life. Today, you'll hear from 3 individuals who have done exactly that. They'll share how their organizations approach nomination process, what they've learned along the way, and the advice they'd offer to anyone looking to recognize outstanding talent through the Step Ahead Awards. So let me bring them in. We're joined today by Addie Ormsby, Director, Food North America Smart Manufacturing Program Leader from Cargill. In addition to managing her company's nomination process, Addie was also recognized as a Step Ahead Emerging Leader in 2016. Next up, we have Heidi Gruhl, Talent Management, Inclusion, and Belonging from Denso, and Michelle Mignon, Manufacturing Chief of Staff Office from Toyota Motor North America. 3 people who come at this from completely different standing points, which is exactly why I wanted them in the same room. So before we get started, a quick reminder that there will be time for your questions at the end of the panel discussions. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat anytime throughout the conversation, and we will get to them during the Q&A portion. So let's get started. Will each of you tell us how you're involved in the Step Ahead Awards nomination process at your company and how long your company has been involved in the awards? Addie, will you start us off?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. So I have been involved with the Manufacturing Institute Step Ahead Awards since 2016 when I was an awardee. At the time, I worked for 3M. And so from winning the prestigious award, I've been paying it forward ever since then. So I was part of 3M's integrated team that submitted nominations each year for about 6 more years. Then I left Cargill and I left 3M, and joined Cargill 4 years ago. Coming into Cargill, they had not heard of it or done it before. So I got to start something from the ground up and create it to what it is, both from the nomination process and something really powerful and impactful internally.
Thank you so much. Michelle?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, Michelle Mignon from Toyota Motor North America. I've been involved with the Step Ahead process at Toyota for 3 years now. This will be the fourth. And Toyota has been involved with the Manufacturing Institute and this award program for well over 10 years. So it's been really exciting to watch it grow and change over the years that I've been involved with the program. And we have a lot of really great insight from our processes internally to share with you guys today. So thanks for having me.
Great. And Heidi.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And also, thanks for having me join today's panel. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about our experience. So from my side with Denso, I've been a part of this program and Manufacturing Institute for the last 3 years, going on my fourth year. Although Denso's relationship with Manufacturing Institute and Step Ahead predates me, similar to the other ladies that spoke, roughly about a decade. We've had our partnership with Manufacturing Institute with winners recognized since 2021. So very excited to continue in the legacy that Denso and the partnership that Denso has with Manufacturing Institute.
Wonderful. So, what I already love is that we have three very different experiences represented here. Some of you inherited as well-established program, others have had to build momentum from the ground up. But regardless of how you got involved, there's a bigger question underneath this. Why is it worth doing it in the first place? What value does your company actually get out of participating in Step Ahead and going through this process? Michelle, do you want to kick us off this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really exciting for our team members to know that they have this recognition. Even just being nominated is a huge honor, and we celebrate it that way. So at Toyota, we want to make sure that our team members are valued and that we definitely make sure that sorry, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. We want to make sure that our team members just have that recognition and understand how much of a prestige award it is.
Yeah, that's definitely something to hold with your company. Heidi?
Yeah, similar to Michelle, I think obviously the recognition is the most important element of this program. But I think for Denso, one of the things that really separates this program separates from others is typically manufacturing is notorious for being hard environment for not only women but men to work and thrive in. And quite often we don't take a moment to pause and recognize the impact and connection that our people make, not only within our companies but to the broader community and to the broader industry. So I think the breadth of visibility and recognition that this program provides, we look at it from this lens of mobility and automotive, but there's so many companies and industry and segments within manufacturing. And again, knowing that sometimes we don't always pause to recognize those that make an impact. This gives us that opportunity to really shine a spotlight on those that have made significant contribution, again, in many, many areas of our work, not just not just within the company, but well beyond. So we feel like that spotlight really gives an opportunity to share that across our industry, and is a great moment for our associates.
Yeah, it's definitely great points that you bring up. Addie?
Yeah, having joined Cargill just as of 4 years ago, what drew me to Cargill is like who they are, their culture, and their beliefs. And at the heart of this company is people first, growing, developing talent, and making them shine. And so coming into Cargill with that strong culture, it's like, how can I make a difference and impact of what they're already doing very well today, right? And when I jumped in and kind of asked around like the Step Ahead Awards made through the Manufacturing Institute, have you guys engaged into those sorts of activities? Hearing that they haven't, it's like, well, this will help elevate the culture, the mentality, the people first that we already have today by elevating top leaders in our organization at a national platform. And so that was kind of the driver behind like bringing it into Cargill, and why I'm here at Cargill is because of the people first mentality.
Great. Addie, I think your story is especially interesting because you've experienced step ahead from almost every angle. When when you worked at 3M, you were recognized as a step ahead awardee yourself, and you were involved in nominations. And now at Cargill, you introduced them to step ahead and started a nomination process from scratch. Not everyone joining us today has inherited an established program process at their company and maybe wondering how to get started. So, can you take me a little into that? What was that like? And maybe the harder part, how did you get people to buy in?
Yeah, having experienced it at 3M and seeing what it does for the people who are involved, the recognition piece, all of that, and it being so impactful is so inspiring. I've been paying it forward since 2016. And so coming to Cargill and wanting to make that impact, I kind of had a little bit of like tips and tricks from 3M that I could bring to Cargill. The key thing to standing something like this up and to make it like a big deal and successful is to get that buy-in at that executive leadership level, because anybody can nominate anyone in the manufacturing industry for this award, and everybody should, right? But how do you grow it more within your company so that it's not just a process that someone one off does, but it's part of your culture? And that was the big thing at 3M that I brought here to Cargill. Is when I first started, networking, meeting people, and when I would introduce myself, I would introduce myself as, a passionate person driving and engaging leaders through the Manufacturing Institute step head of programs and elevating our top talent. And approaching one of the senior VPs here at Cargill saying, hey, I've got this program. It fits very nicely with the culture, the mentality here in Cargill. It's going to sound foreign and weird, but like just trust me and trust the process. And like once you go through it, you'll get to see it and understand it a little bit more. And that senior VP is like, well, what costs does it impact, right? No cost at all. Just let me do the work. You give me some names, some top talented names that you'd like to recognize at this national stage. I will work with them, take care of all the paperwork behind the scenes, get it done, right? That's what got the ball rolling, is just coming into a company and taking that moment of being intentional when introducing myself and taking that chance to share this passion in this program. I will say I've built it year after year. It's gotten bigger and more impactful. And that, like the first year, people didn't quite know what it was, but we were successful and had 3 winners that first year. And having those 3 winners come out to DC and experience all of it, along with some executives there to celebrate with them, then people in Cargill started to talk. And then it became a big deal that each year we've been able to build off the momentum and continue to build something stronger within that we can expand upon.
Yeah, that's just so great that you're able to convince leadership and have it become such a bigger program. Michelle, your experience really highlights the other side of the equation. Sometimes you're stepping into something that is already successful and figuring out how to sustain it, evolve it, and make it better. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that? Uh, what was it like inheriting it, and have you built on it since?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice inheriting a process that already exists. So, step one is always understanding the involvement of your company and how involved or how your company wants to grow with the program. So, over the past 3 now, this being the 4th year, I've seen our involvement really grow. Internally, we're looking to make a network out of our previous winners, since everybody who has previously won now has a plethora of knowledge that they can share, not only from going through the leadership program that the Manufacturing Institute puts them through, but also from the network that they create through winning this award. So there's a lot of different ways that we've tried to grow the program, even, strengthening our nominations year after year, which I know we'll get into a little bit later as well. It's a very in-depth process that we've been able to create, but it is a very rewarding one where we make sure that we are definitely putting forward our best talent.
I would definitely agree with you that starting with something that already exists is a lot easier. And Heidi, you've had your own journey with nominations at Densville. I'd love to hear where
Yeah.
your organization fits along that spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. And similar to Michelle, so my responsibility comes on the backside of it, inheriting from a previous individual responsible for the programming. And similar to what Addie mentioned, it's not just establishing the program, it's really advancing how we seek, and further those nominations year over year. And Michelle kind of mentioned that as well. And I think one of the things I can offer is to share kind of a bridge between the two, whether you're at the stage of just, laying the foundation or setting the foundation for your program, or you're already well established and you're looking through to seek support from executive level, or it could just be, a broad call for nominees. I think there's some things that any company can tackle in terms of maybe an idea to bring forward. And it's really helping your leaders and employees understand you want to start with why the person first. Helping them understand whatever makes the individual stand out besides just being simply a strong performer or leader is a good way to start thinking about those that you can bring forward for nomination. And a few other kind of tips and tricks to go along with that is thinking about people within your organization that can be anchored in a nomination with impact, not just responsibility. We often go to what the type of work they're doing is or what they're responsible for, but it's really about impact for the individual. So I think, again, kind of whether you're new or you're established, you can think of a lot of different angles of individuals that bring impact to your organization. So trying to seek those people out. And then it's beyond the individual. Then you're really trying to establish leading with evidence, identifying differentiators, telling a cohesive story and making it memorable. So I know we'll get into more of the details, but those are some things for us. Again, if I were to share some advice, again, whether you're new or you're more established, some key things that you can think about to really draw in, nominees for this program.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yeah.
So we've talked about why organizations participate and how these programs take shape internally. Let's shift a little from the why to the how. From someone listening today, what does the process of gathering nominees and submitting the nomination form look like? Who's involved? Is it one person, a committee, a group effort? Addie, do you want to kick us off with that answer?
Yeah, so as we've evolved over the last couple years, expanding the program, I have a sponsor as Senior VP, Matt Pearson, who was the inaugural Step Ahead champion 2 years ago. And so I work directly with him each year, and I'm like, okay, our favorite time of the year is up. Let's reach out to see who's out there. And what he does is he sends a blast email out to all of the VP of Ops for all of our manufacturing sites and encourage people at the plant level to look at their top talent of, who's making an impact, not only for the company, but who's making that difference for leaders, engaging that next generation, mentoring, and driving really good, solid results, both in the company and in the community, just that really wholesome person. And so we give the VP of Ops to kind of work with their facility managers within there 2 weeks to funnel up some names. And then it comes to me, and then we start working with those folks and get that written up for them.
Nice. And Michelle?
Yeah, at Toyota, we really try to maximize our reach. So it is a huge group effort. We will start by kicking off all of our executives from our manufacturing facilities, and we have 14 of those across North America. And we also kick off some of our executives from other supporting functions within manufacturing as well. We're looking at R&D and production engineering. So we make sure that it reaches the right audiences. And then we have an internal review committee of previous winners who actually will review every single candidate and decide who our top 10 nominees or submissions are going to be. And then we have an opportunity to go back and say, okay, this candidate made it to the top 10. Let's go ahead and look at some KPIs and really work with them to strengthen those nominations. So it's a joint effort across all of manufacturing at Toyota, with kicking off our executives and then utilizing our internal committee of previous winners to really identify our top talent and help really strengthen all of those nominations.
Yeah, great. And Heidi?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a similarity with Toyota, but also some differences. So we have a multi-prong approach for our internal selection process. We also our executive leadership at Denso is called our North America Council. So before we do any kickoff or internal marketing and communication to our broader organization, we start with our why and our ask for their support and sponsorship for the program every year. And we always ask for their sponsorship of at least one individual from a nomination. Now, it's not guaranteed that we'll actually select them, but we do ask for their sponsorship. We also work with our associate resource groups. Some companies call them business resource groups or employee resource groups, but we always leverage them as our next step in the process to have an outreach, because typically the individuals that are associated and connected with those groups have additional, community service and just kind of general passion for this work in the industry in general. So we always look to them to also navigate and kind of share the word of mouth for receiving strong nominees every year. We do a similar outreach with our HR business partners, again, being more connected with the business and sometimes being able to identify people that otherwise might not be identified through the other channels that we leverage. And then we do an internal call for nominations that we leave open for a couple of weeks, where we ask anyone within the organization to submit a nomination. We currently do it through Microsoft Forms. It's a very simple process where we ask for some information that ties directly to the criteria set by Manufacturing Institute. And there we tend to get quite a bit of interest in nominations again. And in some cases, we're a large company similar to both Cargill and Toyota. Sometimes we get spouses that might nominate, each other, definitely peer nominations. So we do want to make sure that it's an inclusive offering. And again, in some cases, we get nominees, from around the business that otherwise may not come through those other channels. So at that point, we close our internal nomination process. And then similar to Toyota, we have a committee that's set up for review and selection. It also includes our previous awardees. And so when we have a mix, we have individuals from the business, HR business partners, and previous awardees that go through and review and select the nominees, again, in alignment with the criteria set by Manufacturing Institute. And then from there, once we've got those identified, we do our internal validation. And I know we'll talk a little bit about kind of next steps once we have that done, but we do have an internal validation process where we seek more information and we look to validate those experiences as, that have come through the nomination process. So that really, we have a pretty comprehensive call for nomination, review, and selection process that's worked really well for our company. And, even offline, I'd be happy to share more with our participants today.
Yeah, I really like how kind of all three of you have eyes in the field, and everyone in the company participates in some way and is able to nominate people. So once you've identified a strong nominee, that's where the work really begins. The hard part is gathering the information and evidence that brings their story to life. So I want to walk through how you actually build each nominee's story for the nomination form. So Heidi, let me start with you. Once you've identified a nominee, how do you gather what you need? Do you sit down, interview?
Yep. So we have a couple of different things we do. We do interview the individual themselves. Obviously, we want to validate what's been received in their, nomination form. And certainly there might be some other things that maybe were missed in the nomination itself. So we're always looking to validate and make sure that we really capture their full story. We also share the nomination with their chain of command. And so whether they're at, on the production floor or they're an executive, we share throughout to seek additional input. We're usually, individuals may be willing to talk about their achievements and their success, but sometimes they're a little shy talking about their unique stories. So we do seek some additional input from their chain of command to really help emphasize not only company impact, but in some cases, industry impact, or again, could be community engagement or otherwise. So we do seek for that additional information there. And then we do a validation with HR business partner. And sometimes through just our natural processes of through talent review, succession planning, some of our other talent, processes within Denso, we can uncover some additional things to add into their nomination. So that is all part of our validation and confirmation step after we do our internal call for nominations.
That's thorough, which is great. We love to
Yeah.
hear it. Michelle, here's the part I think is particularly challenging. When you're writing about what a nominee has achieved, how do you move past general praise and actually demonstrate real impact? How do you get from she's great to something a reader can actually understand and measure?
So, one of the resources that we provide very early on in our nomination process is actually a list of KPIs. We'll look at the essay questions and then we will help draft up some examples of strong KPIs or examples to throw into the essays. We really do focus also on trying to keep everything in the STAR format. So, situation, task, action, result, so that we can really put emphasis on what was done by the individual, what was contributed, and what was the result of that beyond that individual's actions. So that has been really helpful, and we've seen a lot of very successful nominations focusing with the STAR method, as well as the addition of the KPIs that we have as some examples.
Thank you. And now, Addie, you have a very unique experience and perspective because you not only are a nominator, you were an awardee, and you also judge the nominations, the trifecta. For those who don't know, all of the nominations that are submitted for the Step Ahead Awards are reviewed and scored by a group of former awardees. So, from the judge's perspective, Addie, when you are scoring these nominations, what kind of examples or evidence are you actually looking for? And what tends to stand out to you when you're reviewing an application?
Yeah, I mean, when you're reviewing, a lot of us who are reviewing the judges, have anywhere between 20 to 30 that we're reviewing. And we have to help distinguish, the hundreds, if not close to 1,000 plus some nominations, and really pull out the top 100 for honoree and 30 for emerging leader, etc. So it's a very, very tight window. So like the judges do have to be pretty like high level, like it's got to really stand out. It can't just be your average Joe kind of nomination. And so as a judge, very similar to what Michelle said, I say avoid adjectives and use quantitative numbers. Because as a judge, I can read a nomination where someone significantly made this impact and turned XYZ around, and had a lasting impact, right? Well, as a judge, significant can mean so many different things to so many different companies and people versus if someone came to me and said, Michelle, I'm going to pick on Michelle, had a $2 million savings that impacted 30 employees and had a 20% XYZ, then I'm like, oh, I can actually grasp how much of an impact that is to know like if it's huge and significant, which is what we're trying to pull out. So I'd say those are some of the bigger tips as a judge I'm looking at. I'd also say this drives me crazy as a judge, but when you're writing the nomination is about the person. I have seen too many times where the nomination every question, you only have a 250 character limit. And they spend over half, if not more, talking about the company. And I don't care about the company. I care about the person as the judge. And it pains me to see all this space wasted on sharing about the company than it is about the person. Now, obviously, you have to give a little bit of the context and background as to how big of an impact it is. But you got to keep that very clean and concise and make it about the person. That would be the biggest tip that I would share as a judge reading these nominations is, put as much quantitative information as you can. Avoid adjectives because that's really hard as a judge to assess. And then just, really make sure you're talking about that person and not about your company or the activity itself, and be concise.
Yeah, those are great insights. It's so fascinating to get insights from someone who has seen and done it all. All right, now let's move from best practices we've been discussing to some of the lessons learned. Looking back, what worked best for you in the nomination process? Michelle, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, something that we implemented it just in the past couple years, very recently, and my biggest piece of advice would definitely be vetting the final nomination with that individual to make sure that it represents them well. Because once they are recognized on a national stage and the nomination is published, then that's huge for them. That's super exciting. So we want to make sure that it represents them well and their accomplishments, and that they also have a say in what goes into that final nomination. So that would be my biggest piece of advice there.
Thank you. Heidi?
Well, it's so interesting Michelle has that experience because we do too. And we've had it from the lens of, I think we've had some nominations we've received in the past with really good intent, but maybe it missed the mark in terms of really representing the nominee, appropriately. So I would say that we've in kind of a little bit alluding to like what would we do differently, what we have done differently as we have built in that validation step. The other thing too, maybe I'll add in terms of recognition, and I think this has worked well for us, and it's given a really think extra layer of prestige to being nominated is once we select our individual nominees, we essentially have our executives with the partnering HRBP basically pull them into like a room and we share that they've been selected. So it's kind of we make it a big deal. We've had last year our individuals that are our internal nominees that we submitted to Manufacturing Institute. A couple of the leaders actually, on their own dime brought flowers in or something like that to really recognize the individual. So we had a little bit of a ceremony. It's not huge at that point, right? Like that's just an internal piece that we've done to highlight again, kind of highlight the nominee and for them not only to be recognized as somebody that's going to go forward in the process by Denso, but they get some internal recognition from their leadership team. And in some cases, our individuals last year, we had up to the president level at their sites involved in those meetings. So it's really impactful. And I think that kind of feeling that resonates to be seen and recognized for your work has really kind of gotten out there as it's gotten out there for others and other people want to feel that sense of recognition. And I think leaders see that and how beneficial it is. And that's helped given this program some legs as well in terms of, I want my employee to feel that and see that. And so I know, I have somebody in mind next year that I want to nominate. So I think that's also helped kind of our internal marketing and branding for what the program does.
Yeah, that's great that you're able to do that. Addie.
Yeah, from a lessons learned perspective, having experienced it in two companies, I'd say if you have previous winners, leverage them. They should be part of the process. They should be paying it forward. And they're going to want to, right? but nobody can speak to how impactful and like pivotal it is better than the people who've experienced it. And so having them part of, like Michelle, and I think Heidi also mentioned too, part of like the vetting process, part of helping with the nomination, talking to executive leaders and spreading the word is definitely some like tips and tricks I would give as far as like lessons learned of how to get it to be, more impactful and successful.
Yeah. Now that each of you have been involved in the nomination process for some time, is there anything you would go back and do differently when you first started coordinating the nomination process for your company? Heidi, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I think, one of the biggest lessons learned was, and maybe I can talk a little bit because we fixed it. So maybe not so much something to do differently now, but we did shift. Is we didn't do enough branding and marketing on the front end to explain what a good recognition or nomination looked like. So when I first stepped into my role and took over our internal process, it was more of a broad kind of call for nominations. And I think what we learned there was individuals wanted to recognize one another, but maybe they didn't know how. They didn't quite know, again, the value and credential of what they should include in their nomination to make them stand out. So we do have a SharePoint site where we offer suggestions and tips and things to think about. And we have some prompt questions for people to answer to really help them think about submitting a strong nomination. And we have a video that we share too on that SharePoint that our previous winners share a little bit about their experience. And so we try to show some, again, not only the value of being an awardee, but from a kind of what we're looking for, what that might look like in action to help individuals submit a nomination. Because I think the piece is when we get the volume of nominees that we get, what's really challenging is when we come back to them and say, well, this nomination wasn't selected for moving forward to Manufacturing Institute. And a little bit of the deflated moment or frustration that someone might feel in, well, I see value in this person. Can you explain why? So I think having some of that information on the front end and sharing more about, being intentional with your nominations, how you can help your nominee stand out. That's something that we've done differently. That's helped give us a stronger pool of nominees, and it's helped us explain back to those that may make a nomination if it's not strong enough why, and that we invite them back next year. That's the other piece I think that's critical, is just because you've submitted somebody in the past and maybe even if they weren't selected, it doesn't disqualify them. In fact, one of Denzo's winners last year was a previous nominee that wasn't selected. So there's always that piece as well that I like to share with the businesses. Even if they're not selected this year, let's think about what we can do differently next year, and potentially highlight something unique that makes them stand out.
That's great that they're coming back and they're being nominated again and winning really. Michelle.
So going back to the original question, I believe it was, what would we do differently, right? So 3 nomination cycles ago when I first joined, we would really just gather the nominations and then submit those. And so what we've really tried to do differently is start vetting those nominations and start strengthening those nominations. What I wish we had back then, I'll be the first to say it, AI. If you utilize AI to help strengthen your nomination, you're helping make your nomination more concise for that individual. You're helping with the verbiage, and you can also help identify gaps on what a strong nomination should look like and what you might need to add in your current nomination based on the criteria that the Manufacturing Institute sets. So that's something that we started doing last year, and it's been a huge time savings, and it's also helped us write our KPIs, but it's also helped us have recognize some really incredible people and bring out some information that we probably would not have recognized them for, or questions we would not have known to ask to put into their nominations. So really, I wish we've had AI in our process for the entirety that I've been with this program, but it's been a huge, huge time savings. and a huge help not only for our process, but for the recognition of our nominees.
Yeah, that's great. Addie, is there anything you would go back and do differently when you first started coordinating?
Not necessarily change. I guess one thing I would just call out is make sure HR is involved and you're in alignment with your company policy as far as what can be shared with confidentiality. When I talk about like be quantitative, there is some companies where they don't want to share certain like sales numbers or percentages or whatnot, and so make very sure that you're aligned with HR as far as what is confidential, what needs to be excluded, how else could we show the quantitative numbers with following our process. I think that's really important because you don't want to submit a nomination and share information that is out there without alignment from your HR.
Yeah, that's a great call out. So, if someone is preparing for their very first nomination this year, what are some of the common mistakes they should avoid, and what are the things that seem small but can weaken an otherwise strong nomination? Michelle, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I really want to echo what Addie said previously. I think she said it best. Don't focus on the company, focus on the individual and really quantify the achievements of that individual. I think that that is one of the hardest things to do because you want to set the stage and you want to make sure there's enough background for the story, for the achievement to really shine. But if you use the STAR method and you help make it a concise story, you can still achieve all of those things while still focusing on the individual.
And Heidi?
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to the comments I made early on when we talked about, established program versus first time programming. We do have some key questions internally that help guide our ultimate, nomination once we do make those selections. So I won't go through the things that Addie and Michelle already hit on, but again, I shared a little bit about anchoring your nomination with impact, not their responsibility. So making sure that you're thinking about not just the work that they do and what their job description is, but the impact that they've had. And as we think about then the individual, it is leading with evidence and identifying the differentiator. So one of the questions we often ask internally is, what would we lose if we removed a person's contribution from our story? So, that kind of surfaces the most compelling nomination theme if we ask that question. If there's information therein or if there isn't, then that's a flag for us to make sure that we clarify that before a submission. And I think ultimately the last 2 points here is throughout the nomination, it should tell a cohesive story. So we should be able to see the individual, not only again from their company contribution, but often the individuals we submit are very strong in terms of engaging, the next generation of talent for the industry or the company. That piece is so critical that we highlight in addition to, their community engagement. So it has to be a cohesive story throughout. And if it's missing, then again, we go back and reflect to see what element is missing to make sure that that story is cohesive. And then the last thing is it has to be memorable. So, I mean, Addie talked about, the hundreds or above 1,000 nominations that are submitted each year. So we do ask ourselves, is there something that really differentiates this person, even within our own setting of our organization, that we feel is a unique item that will make them memorable for when they're being, evaluated and judged and why they deserve the recognition. So again, those are some of the questions that we ask ourselves to ensure that the strength of the nomination is there before it's submitted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Addie?
Yeah, I'll add to that is what I found best as far as like writing that nomination. The person who's being nominated knows themselves the best. And so it seems kind of odd, but when I work with individuals, I'm like, hey, you're going to know exactly what's going to make you stand out and differentiate yourself from others. And so I'm going to give you the 4 questions, and you're going to take the time to reflect on your career achievement and what best way to answer that question, right? And then I go back and forth and ask maybe further probing questions to like beef it up and enhance it. But at the end of the day, they're going to know how to answer it versus me interviewing them, looking at their resume, trying to pick and pull different pieces when there might be some big gold nugget there that they don't know or understand this process themselves. So they don't know what exactly you're pulling from. And so by having them do it, it strengthens the ability to write a nomination. I'll also say, like, it's really impactful too for that individual to pause and reflect on all the good things that they have done. Because how many leaders take the moment and celebrate themselves? And we need to do that more often. And so even though it seems kind of clunky, it's a win-win across because you're going to get the best answers because they know themselves the most, but they're also taking a chance to celebrate themselves and think about what they've all accomplished because how many people actually do that.
That's great. So now some organizations submit nominations that aren't awarded and assume that it's the end of the road for those nominations. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout this webinar, but many Step Ahead awardees weren't selected the first time they were nominated. So, Michelle, can you talk about your philosophy and approach to resubmitting nominees? How do you really approach the second or maybe even third attempt?
This is a question that we get a lot from the nominees that are not selected from our pool of candidates. So, as you know, each company can only put forward 10 candidates between emerging leader and honorees, and Toyota will get anywhere from 15 to I've seen around 25 nominations. So it's really it's hard to narrow it down, but also it's a development opportunity. So the question I get a lot is, what can we do to really strengthen this nomination for the following year? And Toyota has had many, many, many winners that were repeat nominees because they'll spend that previous year or that next year, sorry, then really taking advantage of all those development opportunities. And maybe there is a piece of community involvement that was missing, or maybe their story on mentorship could be strengthened. So that'll become the focus now of that nominee for the next year to really help write the story of what they're going to be submitted as a nominee the following year.
Yeah, that's great that they're always given another opportunity to improve and work towards that. So the Step Ahead Awards are a fantastic opportunity to recognize the standout leaders in your organization. But that recognition shouldn't end with the gala. The Step Ahead Awards Gala is an incredible moment, but ultimately it's one evening. The real opportunity is to take that visibility and excitement back into your organization. And I know, Addie, you are particularly excited about this and what you've contributed to Cargill. So I'd love to hear how you've extended that recognition beyond the gala.
Okay, so I've been waiting for this question. This is my favorite one because I'm very proud of what we at Cargill have done here. Is yes, going through the process, and if you win, you get this awesome gala. It's a very, very prestigious award, right? But what about the other ladies that are nominated each year? Like a leader in that organization said, "Hey, this person is doing an outstanding job, is showing up, engaging the next generation, etc." So how can we take this opportunity that each year when we do nominate the folks, that regardless if you win or not, let's celebrate and elevate you anyways. And so each year, this year will be the third annual, but each year we take the 10 ladies nominated and we have them come out to our headquarters here in Minnesota to do a 3-day workshop. Essentially, what I did is I took what the Step Ahead does in DC, the experiences I had between skill sets, behavioral training, motivational speakers, networking, like all of that I did in DC, I created it here in Cargill. And so I give these 10 nominated ladies the opportunity to meet executive leaders that they wouldn't normally be able to meet and actually get a chance to talk to them. One of my favorite events in that 3-day conference I do with those nominated ladies is speed networking, kind of like speed dating. I literally have 12 executive leaders, senior VPs, group presidents that are there, and they get to spend 10 minutes one-on-one intimately with these leaders to again elevate and raise their outstanding achievements and careers on top of building that strong bond with those 10 ladies, because they were nominated that year, and getting to know each other and really understand each other's why, that I have seen over the years that they really lean on each other as well. And so that's what we do here at Cargill is we do an internal step ahead conference to recognize those ladies, to network, skill building, um, all those fun different things I talked about that I can't think of. But yeah, that's what we do at Cargill internally.
That's really great, Addie, that you're able to do something for that, to still celebrate them, even if they weren't able to go to DC. Now, just with a little bit of interest of time, we are closing out soon, so I want to transition to Q&A. So we've covered a lot of ground already. So if you have a question for Addie, Michelle, or Heidi, you can drop it in the Q&A box now, and we'll get to as many as we can. So Leah asked if any of this advice would differ from nominating from a champion. And that's a great question. Much of the advice we've discussed today still applies. Strong champion nominations are still specific, evidence-based, and supported by measurable results whenever possible. The biggest difference, I think I would say, is the lens. With a champion nomination, we're looking beyond an individual's accomplishments and focusing on their influence at a systems level. How have they shaped the culture, created opportunities for others, or driven lasting change within their organization or the industry? So the KPIs and outcomes still matter, but we're especially interested in evidence that their leadership has had a broader sustainable impact on people, culture, and opportunity. So Heidi, Michelle, and Addie, anything would you add to the specific, sorry, anything you would add to the specific to the champion category? I'll let you guys jump in on this one.
I know that the Champion Award is fairly newer, and it is something that we're kind of still developing our strategy around internally at Toyota. But we really have been utilizing our internal resources, talking to our corporate communications teams or to our HR teams to really understand and identify who the best candidates are for that specific award. So I would say that that's the biggest difference for us, is our identification process is a little bit more tailored for the champion award, rather than it being broad and generic and open for the emerging leader and honoree categories. Our champion award is something that we really put a lot of intention and focus into, and that's one that's not necessarily open to group nomination.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add to what Michelle stated. We're also new in exploring our outreach and our process for identifying nominees for this category. The one discussion point we've had quite a bit, especially with and again, I referred to it at the beginning, we have our internal, what we call our North America Council. So it's our most senior level executives for the organization across the region. We've talked a lot about individuals kind of at the pinnacle of their career. So kind of identifying those individuals that have a very unique, again, kind of impact, or again, I'll say impact, but it's really the almost like the legacy that they're leaving behind, and identifying individuals. It doesn't have to be somebody, senior in their career, but typically it is, right? So when we say individuals that are essentially leaving a legacy, we know that the impact is at a much broader level. Typically, the impact really goes well beyond our organization. So we're also talking about individuals where, again, their impact may be more broad in terms of the greater, mobility or greater manufacturing industry. So it's really then not so specific to the company, and it has a much bigger reach. So all that said, again, we're still new and kind of adopting kind of our process and how to identify those. But a little bit of a different lens, as Michelle stated, of what we're looking for there.
And I'll maybe add real quickly with Matt Pearson winning 2 years ago as the inaugural, just to get people a feeling of like what is a champion. I mean, he elevates it and influences global wide. And so he created within Cargill a women in ops program with dedicated resources several years ago to make that difference. And creating a program and having discussions with senior VPs and CEOs to change your organizational structure and have that support global wide was kind of the key thing with his success. He also helped influence other companies after doing this and connecting and integrating with them as well. And so I wanted to just share a little bit of our champion and what it took to be there to give you those in the audience like what is that? We're using a bunch of adjectives, right? But like help us quantify and understand that impact.
Thank you so much. So again, because of the interest of time, I think we are going to stop Q&A. So as I wrap up, I want to leave our audience with one final takeaway. When you think back on the strongest nomination you've submitted, what was the single best factor that made it successful? Heidi, do you want to jump in?
Sure. It's interesting because they're all different and they're all unique. I think the one, I think the one for me, there's one in particular, and it was from a couple of years ago. Just try to be very brief, but we had an individual who she's from Burma and she came to the US not knowing any English and was self-taught, and over a 12-year period started as a temporary associate and worked her way up into leadership and operations. And I say the reason why that stands out for me, and it kind of goes to what Addie said, is it really was able to highlight her own development and career growth, not only from the perspective of impact at Denso, but she serves the community, which at least in our Battle Creek, Michigan area is highly populated with, Burmese individuals. And so seeing that the breadth of community engagement and involvement, how she's carried that through her community, and then also has led into the development of others following in her footsteps and having a career path at Denso that otherwise they thought was impossible. I think that to me shows, again, not only personal contribution and growth, but that she's really paid that forward and really paved a way for other individuals to have that same kind of success in their career, again, that otherwise they probably don't see in themselves, and that peer sponsorship. So in any case, I think that one for me stands out as significant. And again, kind of talking about like leaving a legacy. We've had a lot of growth and opportunity within operations because of her, her paving the way for others.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Addie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I will say this individual woman, she actually didn't win, but working with her to create her nomination, like I cried. It was such a heartfelt, passionate nomination. Like you can feel the difference she's making and paving the way and standing up to people to say that is not right. We need to do better. And so that is one that's made the most impact to me is just the heart and the story that she shared, and happy that like we were able to elevate her even though she didn't win. But it just shows like there's top talent within your company, even if they don't win, that are making a big difference.
Thank you. And Michelle, did you want to?
Yeah, I think success, even beyond the nomination, really comes down to sponsorship and how many allies you have on your side and how you can grow your story. So even if you are someone who's supporting the process, or if you're somebody who's aspiring to win one of these awards, really comes down to sponsorships, having advocates for you, because the way that others see you might be differently than the way that you see yourself. Really having that community come together and help write that strong nomination for you is always a really, really great thing. And then seeking that professional development. If you are nominated one year and then the following year, you're seeking that professional development to better that nomination. So I would say sponsorship is probably the biggest factor of success that I have seen in our nominations in the past.
Yeah. Well, Addie, Heidi, and Michelle, thank you for joining us and dedicating your time today. Before everyone goes, I just want to do a few quick reminders. The Step Ahead nominations are open through October 2nd. Our next solution series will be on September 24th from 12 to 1 p.m. We'll explore inclusion and disability inclusion and the opportunities for manufacturers to better attract, support, and advance employers with disabilities. And then the last announcement we have for today is that the 2026 Workforce Summit will take place October 26 to 28 in Indianapolis. So if you've enjoyed the conversation we've been having throughout the solution series, the summit is a great opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into the workforce challenges and solutions. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. It was great having you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good luck, you guys.